Good evening, all. Veteran Crypto here with Bullshit and Bourbon. We're going to do a quick video on something that is of paramount importance. There is a lot going on currently with the election coming up. Uh, the media loves to distract. There's always distractions to divert our attention from things that those in power wish to do to influence and to take more of our freedoms and always more of our money through taxes and things like that. But without further ado, I'll kind of excuse my hoarseness and thank you to Blockchain Basement as an RWA for pointing out my typo. It's a 5240 .01, not 04. So thank you for correcting me on that. All right, so we'll jump into this really quick. Let's do a screen share. We'll start off with this. So if you're not already, please follow on YouTube. I'm Veteran Crypto there. YouTube is not as pro 1A as X. On X, I'm Bullshit and Bourbon. YouTube would not allow me to do that. So if you could, follow me there. Also, again, used to be I'm Veteran for Crypto is where you can find me, and it's just Bullshit and Bourbon. And usually our Sunday shows, as those of you that are watching right now in the chat, it's usually me and Taylor, Jeff, and Gary. And sometimes we'll have a guest on. This Sunday, we're actually going to be talking about the use of mushrooms, marijuana, and other natural remedies. The kind of the rise of those for things like PTSD and things like that. I decided to break that out from the overall, you know, uh, you know, episode that I was going to do about poisons in our food and the overprescribing of prescription medications and the potential impact on our physical and mental health and the rise of mental illness and things like that over the past decade. So anyway, there's that. So before we start on this topic, I want to give a little bit of background, and to give you a little background on me, I was in the military for 22 years. One of my many jobs, I was a UAV operator or a drone pilot, and part of that, we used a term, and it's a legal term called posse comitatus, and what that covers is, and here I'll just read this a little bit of this real quick. It's a Latin term, roughly meaning force of country or county, excuse me. But it was a law or an act that was passed in 1878 that restricts the federal government in using the military, specifically the Army, Air Force, things like that, on domestically. So the way that they have troops to use domestically is the National Guard. Um, Even though the National Guard has restrictions as well. They are not allowed to surveil uh, U.S. citizens or on U.S. soil. So, as a UAV operator, I was in charge of the platoon. We were trying to operate in national airspace. Because of posse comitatus, we weren't even allowed to fly in national airspace. That shows you how restrictive it's supposed to be. I wanted to give you that background so that you understand the gravity of what I'm about to go over. So this gentleman, Michael Hicks, I do not know this gentleman. He was in the military. Let me check if there's any questions real quick. Hey, Crypto Breezy, how's it going? K-Jam, glad you all could join. So I do not know the gentleman, Michael Hicks. He was a 30-year veteran of the Army and an intel officer. So he is steeped in regulations, both military and federal, on the do's and don'ts of active military, in this capacity. with human SIGINT, human intelligence, signals intelligence, anything like that. So I'm going to plagiarize a little bit from him. I'm just going to kind of read, go through this thread, and then I'll kind of expound on it, from my personal experience, and hopefully give people a better understanding of the gravity of this. So the summary: should you as a citizen be concerned about the changes in the new 5240.01? Yes, you absolutely should. However, he goes on to say that this does give the military some sweeping powers as far as use of lethal force. We'll cover that. Um, while others think it's nothing to worry about, both are wrong. It's not as serious, and it is also serious in different ways. A lot of people will, initially look at this and on the surface say, the government is overstepping, which they are, but they'll immediately say that they can use lethal force and they're going to do martial law, and like you got to pump the brakes. In this politically charged climate that we're in now, it's very important to keep your emotions in check. Just like with crypto investing or investing in general, politics, you really need to stay calm and collected. You can't allow yourself to be caught up, emotionally, because if you do, then you're easily manipulated. So, just like in the markets. So, first, the core change that you should really be concerned about is right up front in the title. So, this is the initial DoD manual, and the title was Procedures Governing the Conduct of DoD, Department of Defense, Intelligence Activities. Now, the way that it reads is DoD intelligence and intelligence related activities and defense intelligent components assistance to law enforcement agencies and other civil authorities. So basically, the manual has now been geared towards direct support domestically of active duty elements of the military. Not a good thing. Next up, the changes are further elaborated in the old and the new. So the purpose, and this is the way military manuals are, start out. They always have the purpose. In accordance with the authority and DoD Directive, Department of Defense Directive 5240.01 and Executive Order EO 123333, this issuance establishes procedures to enable DoD to conduct authorized intelligence activities in a manner that protects the constitutional and legal rights and privacy and civil liberties of U.S. persons. DoD authorized intelligence activities are foreign intelligence and counterintelligence activities unless otherwise specified in this issuance. I know it's legalese, and I'll summarize. Basically, this is how it used to be, and this is what I dealt with when I was in the military when we wanted to fly drones in national airspace and we're not allowed. It was strictly prohibited. You, as a Department of Defense, employee or whatever you want to call it, are not allowed to conduct intelligence activities or counterintelligence domestically. Period. That's why there's a CIA that does overseas intelligence and why there's FBI that does domestic intelligence. There's a clear separation of the two. I will continue. Actually, hold on. Let me see if there's any questions. Yes, this channel is not financial advice, and this channel is for entertainment purposes only. All right. All right. So, back to here. Keep in mind that the intel community has always had channels to provide support to federal law enforcement agencies. Federal. Yes, that is correct. So when I was in my pilot school for UAVs, it was down at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. While we were flying, doing training inside of the restricted airspace of the base, not in national airspace, part of that was on the border. While we were training, if we saw any illegal activities, people crossing the border, smuggling, anything like that, we were allowed to report that to the Border Patrol, and appropriate authorities, because we were operating in the proper airspace and had intelligence that was pertinent to national defense. So There are exceptions and always has been. I will continue. For, and he says, for example, if the NSA, a DoD intelligence agency, happens to discover information about potential crimes while pursuing its foreign intelligence gathering mission, it turns that information over to the relative law enforcement agency, like the FBI, to pursue, just like I just detailed to you. That's the way it's supposed to be. But the new opens the door for DoD intel elements to provide intelligence support directly to state and local law enforcement agencies and other civil authorities. This is where it starts getting slippery. In fact, the key section of the previous iteration, and I'm not going to go through all of it, it's 56 pages. You're going to have to do some due diligence on your own. Those are all gone. They have been scrubbed from this directive. So basically, all of those left and right limits are now gone. It opens a whole lot of doors that allows them powers they did not previously have. With an administrative sleight of hand, the old Section 3 has essentially been offloaded to other documents, mainly Executive Order 12333, United States Intelligence Activities. So back to this document, the 5240. First of all, this document does not give any sweeping authorities to the U.S. military to kill Americans. It doesn't. 5240 only pertains to DoD intelligence components. That's the good news. Before you breathe a sigh of relief, there is cause for alarm by the reference in 5240 to lethality and lethal force. As a former intel guy, I do not want to see any variation of lethal in the context of domestic DoD intelligence components or personnel. And I couldn't agree more. Secretary Defense approval. Pay close attention to that. The Secretary of Defense may approve at any type of requested permissible assistance described in paragraph 3.2. The decision to approve requests for these types of permissible assistance described in paragraph 3.2 to law enforcement agencies and other civil authorities are reserved to the Secretary of Defense. So basically, all this that I'm about to read, the Secretary of Defense is now going to be able to authorize. This is where it starts getting a little bit scary. Provision of personnel to support response efforts for civil disturbances, which may also require presidential authorization. DoD response to chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and high yield explosive incidents. Assistance in responding with assets with potential for lethality for any situation in which is reasonably foreseeable that providing the requested assistance may involve the use of force that is likely to result in lethal force, including death or serious bodily injury. It also includes all support to civilian law enforcement officials in situations where a confrontation between civilian law enforcement and civilian individuals or groups is reasonably anticipated. Such use of force must be in accordance with Department of Defense Directive 5210, potentially as further restricted based on the specifics of the requested support. So this opens the door, with approval from the Secretary of Defense, for active duty military personnel in direct support of FBI, local law enforcement, sheriff, whatever, to use lethal force on U.S. citizens. And this is the way that I'm reading it. By all means, feel free to sharpshoot me. It says again, this is not a sweeping grant for DoD intel types to go to ground shooting people. There are constraints referred to in Bowlegs 2 above. Going back to paragraph 3.2, so the lethal force bit should only be considered in the context of those situations. So let's scan over this. Yes. So let's see. Sorry, I'm gonna graze over this. I don't have to read the whole thing to you. I always hate it when people give presentations and just read what's on the slides. It's very very technical, very a lot of legalese, and so I don't want to just shoot from the hip on it. It's very important that I'm accurate on this. I don't want to give any undue panic or anything like that. And at the end here, I really want to get some questions from y'all in the chat. Excuse me, let me get a drink. All right. Section 3.2 is interesting. As a safety on all this, SecDef or Secretary of Defense approval is required for any potentially lethal actions, but it's really up to the SecDef's discretion within all the bits of Section 3.2 above. And he just reposts the same thing that I just went over with you. For your information, Department of Defense Directive 5210, arming and use of force, covers the use of weapons by certain DoD personnel, not combat troops. So I tried to pull that up. I wanted to see some details on that. Unfortunately, it does not come up. Not, I don't want to draw any conclusions as to why, but I could not get it to come up. So moving on. The other mention of lethality in 3.4 below, this essentially says that SecDef or designees under 5240 must consider the potential for lethality as a risk, but that's up to their discretion as long as it falls within permissible assistance situations that were listed above. So, approval considerations of requests for permissible assistance that we went over. The legal office responsible for advising the approval authority must determine the assistance may be provided lawfully. So, I mean, this doesn't give them a license to, break any existing laws or anything like that. However, this is like the Patriot Act. This is giving authority to violate the Constitution and posse comitatus and a lot of other, laws and regulations, things like that. So, executive orders, things of that nature. So, lethality, the extent to which assistance to be provided involves the potential use of lethal force. This is giving windows to where use of lethal force potentially could be authorized. So, yes, there's plenty of reason to worry about the lethal force bit, but again, this does not give SecDef sweeping powers to use military at large against Americans. But what I direct your attention to was item D, Bowlegs D, about provision or use of DoD unmanned systems, UAVs. That's what I used to do. That should be of concern. So, I haven't had a chance, and I'm not going to speculate the entirety of this, but from what I have seen so far, and again, feel free to sharpshoot me, they are authorizing the use with SecDef approval of unmanned systems in national airspace. That could simply be for surveillance. There's plenty of UAS, military UAS, that only have surveillance packages on them. Some of those surveillance packages can be very intrusive. Again, I've used them. Not just through optics of being able to see certain things and whatnot, but also there are packages that can pick up cell phone signals. They can scrub cell phones, and basically see, who it is that you've talked to, and who it is that you're currently talking to. They can, track your location. Once they have your phone number of your cell phone, they can triangulate your position. Anywhere anybody that's carrying that phone, where they go. There's a lot of things that people can do with some of those packages, and of course, there's weapon systems as well. But let's get back to the pesky 3.2 permissible assistance. First off, when lives are in danger, is doing a lot of lifting. And what he means by that, it's kind of a military term. I mean, not just military, but we use it in the military a lot. Basically, what it's saying is that it's it's balling a lot of things up in that term when lives are in danger. It's very nebulous. So, what makes lives in danger? That somebody on X, said something violent. Now is lives in danger, so they can violate that person's constitutional rights. Um, there's some people protesting on the left or on the right. I mean, this isn't just for those of us that are right leaning. If you're on the left or the right, this should concern you because whoever's in power is the one that can wield this power. So, if Trump, that the left hates so much, if he gets in power, this would allow him. If you really honestly think that he's going to be a dictator, this gives him the power, if he so desired, to use Department of Defense assets domestically against U.S. citizens. If you're deemed as a threat, you got to be real careful. Don't get caught up in the politics and the partisanship and let it blind you to what's being done. Because, again, it can go, it's a double edged sword, it can cut both ways. But now we have DoD, IC intelligence elements able, with appropriate approval, to provide intel support to state and local law enforcement and civil authorities when lives are in danger. There's that term again, which is largely up to the interpretation of the relevant authorities, which could be the local law enforcement agencies when they request. It could be the SecDef. It could be anyone in that chain of command that presents. I mean, this kind of goes back to those FISA courts. Those dark FISA courts that they used on the January 6th people, where they violated their I almost said posse comitatus, their due process, where a lot of them were held without trial in solitary confinement, in direct violation of their constitutional rights under the Patriot Act, and those FISA courts. I'm telling you, people, wake up. All right, paragraphs 1, 2, and 3 with the legal office approval proviso, I have no particular issue with. All right, I'll scan it real quick. Providing this is of note. Providing specialized equipment, technical knowledge, or assistance of expert personnel for use by any federal department or agency, or when lives are endangered, again, to support state and local law enforcement agencies. That is nebulous as shit. Providing specialized equipment. That is literally everything that the U.S. military uses. That is saying that they are authorizing the use of any specialized U.S. military equipment, any technical knowledge, or assistance of expert personnel. So, draw your own conclusions. I'll move on. I don't want this to take all night. But then we get to 4, 5, and 6. Trust me on this as someone who was drilled for years in intelligence oversight. There is a boatload of potential abuse wrapped up in those 3 paragraphs, especially with the lives are in danger caveat as a trigger. Also, may be relevant in number 5 and reasonably believed. Reasonably. This goes to like what brings to my mind the reasonably or reasonable forget, but reasonably believed. You get pulled over by a police officer. They smell something in the car and gives them reasonable suspicion. That's what I was looking for. To where now they can call a police dog. They can ask you to exit the vehicle. It gives them a lot of powers just because they might have smelled something, or you might have been drinking. These are very, very slippery slopes that we've allowed, and this new one is like those on steroids. So I'm sorry. I'll continue. So I'll read through this real quick. Dissemination of intelligence information where such information may be relevant to a violation of any federal, state law within the recipient's jurisdiction in accordance with Section 271 of Title 10. Disseminating lawfully collected information reasonably believed to indicate a violation. foreign laws in accordance with August 22, 1995 Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, between DoD, Department of Justice, and applicable memorandums of understanding. Um, yes, person's information. Okay, so basically, this is just again a lot of really nebulous wording that, in a nutshell, says that they can't violate any. This doesn't give them authority to violate any federal laws, um, other than the fact that, in and of itself, this document is letting them violate the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. Do with that as you will. Another thing that bothers me about the new versions of 5240 was that while the old version gave necessary leeway, otherwise it clearly defined the authorities and activities, and that's all those pages that I mentioned before that had been scrubbed. Um, Basically, what those pages were is it, in great detail, uh, lined out what DoD intelligence elements could and could not engage in. So all of that stuff where like UAS aren't allowed to operate in national airspace, CIA can't, do the things that they do, things like that. That's all been removed. Um, Believe me, you want that kind of specificity in an authorities document covering intelligence activities. You want to keep that genie in the bottle. But the new version doesn't do that. What it covers is very general, and all of the normal DoD intel aspects covered in Section 3 have been deleted and replaced with assistance to law enforcement agencies and other civil authorities, end quote. In my honest opinion, that is not a good thing at all. And keep in mind, this gentleman is a 30-year veteran of the Army, an intel officer. He is a subject matter expert. The timing, of course, is also a bit suspect, as it always is. It was just released over 5 weeks prior to an election in November. I think that's likely not a coincidence. Anybody who's paying attention, last election, we had pandemics. We had, the summer of love with 8 months of burning, looting, and rioting. That was quote unquote mostly peaceful. You know, Agree or not, January 6th was an event. Who started it, who was behind it, who's responsible for it can all be debated. However, a lot of things happen during this time frame. I was just reading on the news today that in Japan, there is an avian flu that is popping up. I guess in California, there's a bunch of dead cows from it. They were just talking not too long ago about a new, strain of COVID. Now you have this document being released. You have, the Palestinian pro-Palestinian protesters that are getting more and more emboldened. I personally foresee, and I hope I am wrong, that no matter how this election goes, leading up to this election and immediately after, you will want to ensure, and I again hope I am wrong, that you have at a minimum a 72-hour kit. You need to ensure that you have enough supplies for a minimum of 72 hours: food, water, necessary medications, things of that nature, a way to defend yourself. You do not want to be going out if things get spicy. Optimally, maybe go visit a friend in the country. If you have that flexibility, if you work from home or something like that, get an Airbnb. I don't know. Do whatever you feel is appropriate. However, let's go here. All right. So what do we got? I'm gonna go over the chat here real quick. All right, K Jam. I know health and pharma laws. It's doctors, but good at what he does. Jam, okay, I'll do that. Ladies in urgent care know me well. Oh, hey, what's up, C90? So yeah, that's basically what I got. I wanted to break that down because I saw this pop on social media, and I wanted to dispel, the rumor mills. Because again, people in this day and age, they are over emotional. Um, both left and the right. It's why I really am a huge fan of trying to be as stoic as possible and not letting my emotions get the better of me. When I first saw this, my initial reaction was, "Oh shit, here we go." And then I pumped my brakes and I started digging into it. Um, and yeah, and saw that yes, there is cause for concern. Is martial law going to be a thing? Um, I would say from this document alone, no. Does it open the door? Yes. So between I would put this on the level of if the Patriot Act is a 10, I would say this is a 7. The Patriot Act was a huge violation of constitutional law, due process, things like that. Allowing them to hold somebody indefinitely, without charging them, and those FISA courts where basically any law enforcement agency could go to them and present a shoddy at best justification. Isn't a Democrat and Republican thing that we're divided, the bolder they're getting at taking our rights and taking our money and our value. There's a lot going on right now where we're getting hoodwinked. We the people, we have a government that if you don't pay property taxes, they can take your home, freeze your bank accounts, take your social security check, a house that you spent 30, 40 years paying off. They can take in the blink of an eye because you owe them $5,000, in back taxes. Um, they can come in and take your property by use of eminent domain for nothing. They can just say, "We want to build a road through your property," and steal your property. Our government can steal. We are not a free people anymore, and we need to hold our peacefully. We need to hold our politicians accountable. We need to stop fighting each other, and we need to stand up against the uniparty because they are both the left and the right wing of the same bird. Wake up, stop fighting each other on social media. If you're talking to somebody on social media, please read what they say and seek to understand before you respond. I'm guilty of it too. I get frustrated as shit on X daily trying to get through to people. Like I'll even agree with them, but because initially they saw me as opposition, they just go into attack mode and they're blinded that I'm agreeing with them on something. You you can agree on some things. It's okay. We all want the same things. We just disagree with how to get there. We all want to be free. We all want to be left alone to live our lives. Some people's idea of freedom these days is kind of twisted, in my opinion. Some people think that the government providing everything for us is freedom. No, that's slavery. But I won't get into that. So that's all I really got for you. I'll get off my soapbox. But any of you guys got any questions in the chat about anything I covered? I mean, to summarize, basically, the door's been cracked for Department of Defense to use, active duty, CIA, things like that, domestically, and they can spy on us now. Not like they weren't already, but now not just NSA, Homeland Security, and FBI. Now we have the CIA and active duty military potentially. So the entirety of the federal government and local law enforcement is now surveilling us and potentially has authority to use lethal force to to do whatever it is that they desire. So take that as you will. If there are no questions, yeah, C90. You might want to go back and watch. Um, but I'll go ahead and sign off. I appreciate you guys for showing up and have a good night. Veteran Crypto out.